Does the greater disability community really understand the deaf community? This is truly a loaded question, but we'll discuss today. When we look at the deaf community, we're talking about individuals who identify as a member of a linguistic and cultural minority. Within this group, there are also deaf individuals who have an additional disability. When we think about the disability community and the deaf community in the context of mainstream society, both groups are often disadvantaged and marginalized. When we look at the differences of both communities, there are a number of differences. These include how they communicate, their primary language, as well as how they identify themselves. Let's talk about identification first. Deaf individuals often identify as deaf individuals. I am a deaf person, not person with deafness. On the contrary, within the disability community, we often come across individuals who identify as a person with so-and-so disability. There's no right or wrong answer here. It's just how people choose to express themselves. I've been involved in multiple conversations about how I identify as a deaf person before I even talk about having a disability. This has thrown people off because they simply don't understand why I identify this way. As a member of the signing deaf community, I share similar experiences with other individuals, including specific values and norms. Do we understand the experiences of the disability community? Not necessarily, but there's a level of empathy there. Conversations about these topics are often fascinating. Not only that, when we think about challenges with communication, we think about use of language. Now, my primary language is American Sign Language, and that's true for many other deaf individuals. We're simply most comfortable using American Sign Language. There are a number of first-hand experiences and stories I can share regarding interacting with members of the disability community and disability-centered organizations. Oftentimes, these are regarding the provision of interpreting services. Here's an example. An interpreter is assigned, but doesn't necessarily meet my particular needs. Sometimes the organization interfaces only with the agency or the interpreter without ever involving me as a part of the dialogue. As a result, I don't have the option to provide my list of preferred interpreters or specific needs that I have. Am I the only one who has had this experience? Unfortunately, no. It's not only this, I've seen different disability-centered organizations use automatic captions for webinars. These captions are not 100% reliable. Essentially, this is a missed opportunity. Other examples include using platforms that are not entirely accessible and do not meet the needs of deaf and hard of hearing individuals. Another example is creating videos and only uploading a transcript. The lack of captions result in an inadequate and inequitable experience. When looking at the disability community and deaf community, we need to remember that the deaf community is already marginalized in the context of mainstream society. Unfortunately, the deaf community is further marginalized within the disability community. We need to remember the phrase, nothing about us without us. It's important the disability community take this to heart and make sure every aspect of the disability community, including the deaf community, is included as a part of the dialogue and that the overarching experience is inclusive. Without that, we won't make progress at the rate we should.